Okay, well, I'm Sheila King, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for AESA, the Association of Educational Service Agencies. I hope that most of the people on this call know who we are and that we are your member organization as service agencies around the country. Um, Today, we are here and extremely excited to be a partner with COSN. And AASA and CETA on this amazing project around generative AI readiness for K-12 education. Uh, we had the opportunity as COSN and AESA to secure a grant from the Gates Foundation to build this model. Our goal is for this to be a sustainable model over time to bring Gen AI in a safe, impactful way into our K-12 schools. For ESAs, we're hoping that you will help us focus heavily on small and medium-sized districts because we're seeing around the country that those are the folks who are having the heaviest lift of a heavy lift in moving this into our educational settings. And we know that ESAs have amazing relationships with their schools and especially are strong in working with those small and medium-sized districts whose resources look different. Clearly, Coven is an expert when it comes to this kind of work and partnering with them on this content and building these training sessions. We just know that this is a great partnership, and we are very happy to have so many of you online today to learn about the direction we're taking. And I will be quiet so my colleague from COSN, Robert Duke, can introduce himself as well. But we are super happy to have you and excited to get into our session. So welcome.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm Robert Duke. I'm Chief Operating Officer for COSN, and I'm excited that all of you chose to be with us today to learn more about this opportunity. I'm going to assume that most of you know who COSN is, but in the event that you don't, we are a membership organization for K-12 EdTech leaders. We produce each year we focus on topics of interest to our community. Such as AI, cybersecurity, student data privacy, and we have a ton of resources on our website. Much of it is free. So if you need something in that area and you're unfamiliar with COSN, please feel free to go to our website and grab what you need. And with that, I'll turn it over to Pete Just, who is our project leader.
Thanks, Robert, and thank you, Sheila. Welcome, everyone. I'm Pete Just. I am the COSN AI Project Director. I spent my entire career in a classroom or a school district up until recently, as I've been working with COSN as their AI Project Director post-retirement. So glad to be here and working with all of you today on the information about this program, which I think is really exciting for schools. So what are we going to do today? Real quick, just an overview right now. Obviously, we're in the middle of that and introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of this initiative, the importance of generative AI in general. I would imagine most of you are fairly up to speed with that. Question. We're going to dive a little bit into the opportunity then for the rest of the time and specifically what tool we're talking about and do a bit of a deep dive into that. So that's what we'll be doing in the next half an hour or so. Please put questions into the chat if you have them as we go along, and also we'll have time at the end for just sort of a round robin set of questions that all of us can participate in answering. So thanks for being here today. So basically, the opportunity we think is significant in terms of schools are needing to have assistance because their adoption has a bit of a roadway, a pathway that can be somewhat complex and complicated. And many times, school districts are focusing on the wrong thing. I'll just be transparent because I don't think there are any vendors here, but a lot of them are focusing on applications. Which apps should we buy? That's probably not the first question to ask, but we want to try to help school districts understand the opportunity of generative AI, how that can impact their students and their futures, and how we can help them develop a program that they can measure and can see success with. So this initiative is specifically grant funded by the Gates Foundation to build capacity for generative AI adoption in school districts. The goal is to take CoSN resources and spread them across the country. Many of our resources often hit pretty well with mega districts, large districts, medium districts, maybe small districts. There's actually, I think, 4 board members at CoSN that are small districts. But in many cases, a lot of small districts are left behind, mostly because we don't have ways to connect with them. So we're very excited about working with AESA in terms of developing AI implementation roadmaps through a set of trainers nationally that will be able to provide that training at the local level. So this role is what we call the regional trainer role. We had requests out for applications for lead trainers and received a lot of those applications. Some of you may be a part of that. We chose 12 of those a couple of weeks ago as lead trainers. This is a regional trainer role, which is going to be the person who's going to do a lot of the, be doing the training sessions locally through their ESA. And our goal is to be able to empower the school districts that we work with that want to be part of this program with a very actionable, very orchestrated approach. And we're also working to try to increase your training expertise as trainers in this area of generative AI. And I would imagine most of you are pretty familiar with classroom applications and classroom utilization and have done a lot of training perhaps already in terms of how to incorporate generative AI into classrooms in creative and innovative ways, how to leverage it. But this is a bit of a bigger focus, working across the district in operational ways as well. So we think you would grow very much in that regard. So in terms of who we're looking for people like yourselves who are exceptional leaders, who have been in the professional development game for a while, have a passion for generative AI, and can see what the future might look like for our students, and might see what it looks like for those students that don't have exposure to generative AI, as many fields are adopting this. This is an interesting phenomenon because most technology integrations over the years, and I've been doing that for decades, it often will start in a business, move its way eventually to higher ed, maybe, or maybe K-12, and then move its way to higher ed. But it takes years for that transition to happen. In generative AI, with generative AI, as you know, we are growing in every area at the same time because the barrier to entry is relatively small when you look at technological barriers. But the barrier to entry is significant when you look at issues in relationship to policy and some of the concerns we have with student data privacy and things of that nature. So we want to try to help the people that are regional trainers, lead trainers, to understand that more deeply. In terms of why would you be interested? Well, I think there's a number of reasons. We believe that there's an opportunity to all of us went into education, I think, for the purpose of trying to have an impact on the world around us, an impact on our communities, an impact on the world, an impact on individual students. And so this is another way to do that in terms of supporting districts. If you have left the classroom, which I imagine most of you have, you did that because you thought you might have a better opportunity to have greater impact, greater opportunity somewhere else. And this is just a continuation of that. And there's a lot of opportunity here, as I mentioned earlier, for professional growth, and then also for your ESA, an opportunity for them to establish themselves as a leader in AI professional development and best practice. In terms of what the benefits are of being a regional trainer, this will be a national network. And this is just to be clear, this is an opportunity that is not a one and done type of training. Like sometimes I've been to training where you go for a day or two and you get some certification and check you're done with that. There's never any continuing education requirements. There's never any continued education opportunities. There's not any coaching. This is going to be all of that. So the lead trainers are the coaches for the regional trainers. This is grant funded to get started, but we are trying to create a sustainable model that will last for years. And so we hope to be able to continue that model of subject matter experts like myself, Tom and Adam, who are helping build the content and helping to do the presentations. We'll be working with the lead trainers. The lead trainers will be working with the regional trainers, and the regional trainers will be working with the school districts directly. So this will become an excellent national network of expertise with continuing education and opportunities for a lot of co-development of content and product as well. So pretty exciting, I think, for those of you who are interested in that sort of thing. Um, the digital credential that you will receive as a regional trainer is obviously a nice thing to have, just acknowledging your participation in the program and your training. Obviously, that will give you an opportunity to, establish yourself and your ESA in your region as experts in this area. And speaking of your ESA, we're building a sustainable model along with AESA to be able to provide options for your ESA to, generate some income as continued expansion of your services offerings, and also to enhance the reputation of your organization because of the direct affiliation with AESA as well as COSIN. We think those are significant things to offer to the districts in your area and just a indicator of your level of prominence in the knowledge of these things. So in terms of the training levels, I've talked a couple of times about lead trainers and regional trainers. Lead trainers will also do some training in locally. As a matter of fact, they'll be the first ones to be able to do that because they're actually getting trained next week. This is open for a little bit longer, and then we'll select regional trainers, and those trainings will take place starting in May and through the summer. And then as you're trained, you'll be able to start providing local trainings in your region through your ESA. We think it's a pretty urgent need right now. For the last 2 years, I've been doing presentations to school boards, superintendents, chief technology officers, operations officials, and they all acknowledge that this is something they need to do something about, but they're all sort of still scratching their heads on how do we start? If we've started, how do we know where we should be progressing to? How do we measure our current state, determine our future state, and then figure out the roadmap between those two places. This is what the greatest need is right now. And many cases, much like with anything new, we're trying a lot of different things and seeing what sticks to the wall. That's what we do as educators. When things aren't working in my biology classroom, I went to plan B, then I went to plan C, and then I started inventing stuff as I went along because those kids are sitting there waiting for you to do something. So that's just the nature, I think, of us as educators. And as educators in the classroom become educators in the administrative roles, that sort of continues. And so they're looking for help, and we think this is a program that can provide that to them. So let's talk a little bit about this thing I've sort of been talking about around the corners. It's the generative AI maturity tool that COSIN released about a year and a half ago. Prior to this, we had a readiness tool, and that was just helping schools, have the right conversations in cabinet with their school boards, with their teachers, with their professional developers about what is the meaning of generative AI as it relates to our roles as educators, as our roles of preparing students for the workforce, for their futures, for them to be able to be competently equipped. And so as we saw the need, we built the readiness framework. And then from that, in association with the Council of Great City Schools, which are the big kind of 100 school districts across the country, we built the AI maturity tool. And so It focuses on maturity because we think that it's important for school districts to understand where they're at, define where they want to go, and then make the connection, or what I would call a roadmap, to get there. The maturity tool itself is really kind of covers three different levels of what we call maturity: emerging, developing, and mature. If you've seen rubrics like this, you kind of understand how that rolls. And then we have 7 readiness domains. These include a lot of operational aspects, which you may or may not expect. A lot of us have focused for a long time on the academic side, the classroom side, maybe even the curriculum side. And that is the newest domain of the readiness domains. It's domain 7. For the first couple of iterations, we just had 6, and we added this just in November of this past year. So the maturity tool itself, then, an example of what we're talking about, excuse me, is I would imagine most of us are pretty familiar with, excuse me, with the idea of academics. Sorry, got a frog in my throat there. So for example, this is domain 7, the AI literacy readiness domain, and you can kind of see maybe that this is 1.2 or 7.2.1. But rather than having you try to squint and see what I'm talking about, why don't I go ahead and jump into the readiness tool so that you can understand what it is we're talking about. Jump out of this, and then I'll jump into that. Thanks for your patience as I do it. All right, so this is the readiness tool. And as I scroll down through here, you can see it's quite extensive. Yes, it just keeps going.
You're
Oh,
not
we're
sharing
halfway.
your screen.
Yeah, we're not.
Oh, am I not sharing it?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Sorry. How's this? Now it works. All right. Sorry about that. I thought I hit that and I didn't. So let me go back up. Thanks for telling me that. Just going through all the different pages here. There's quite a few, and it just goes to speak to the level of depth to which we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into a couple of areas. Oops, that's not the one I wanted. Security readiness. I'm going to look at the one that probably most of us are familiar with, which is academic AI literacy readiness, and that part includes 7 different sections, and I'm going to jump to the one that maybe you're most familiar with, which is going to be 7.2. Just so I think this helps you better understand how this works. So here we have emerging, developing, and mature. And then we have a breakdown of what this subdomain element is. Training, professional development programs. You can see down here we have resource access. We'll get to that maybe in a second. But what we'll see for each one of these levels of maturity is something we call evidence. So it's great to be able to say, yeah, we do that. But when you double check, a lot of times people may sort of do something, and our determination is, when we're doing these types of rubrics, we need something objective. We need something to clearly define that you are at that level. So in other words, we call that evidence. So what does evidence look like for an emerging professional development program in generative AI for teachers? So we have occasional workshops, primarily introductory. All right, so that makes sense. That's emerging. What's it look like for you to be developing? Well, you've got a lot more participation. So that's relative to the emerging level. What does a lot more mean? Probably depends on your school district. But here's what is really happening to the educators. They're beginning to implement the learned techniques in their teaching. So it's one thing to be able to teach it, and you might be able to prove, well, we had 50 people in these 3 trainings. But when you can show that teachers are actually implementing, now we're at a developing level. And what's it mean to be mature? High levels of proficiency among educators with visible improvements in teaching effectiveness and student engagement. So you'll have to find a way to prove that this is true. And these are the skills that we're talking about in terms of developing within the lead and the regional trainers is how do you know that is happening? What are the tools that you can use, or what are the approaches that you can use to better kind of prove and have evidence for that? So hopefully that helps you understand. And then for each of these, of course, there's also recommendations. So when you do get to this mature level, you're going to see this a lot, is just a continuous improvement program for training and professional development. Because as we know, generative AI doesn't sit still. It doesn't take a week for you to be out of date with keeping track. So all it takes is a vacation for you to be out of the loop these days with this, and it's not going to change too much, I think, going forward. So that also addresses a question we had last time when we had the meeting yesterday, in terms of, is this static? And I will say that in 2 years that we've had, not even 2 years that we've had this is iteration 4. So every 6 months, this is changing. And so likewise, this training will be changing continuously. And that's one of the things we need help with for you as regional trainers, as well as for lead trainers. So let's take a dive into another area, and then we'll come back to the bigger picture. So data readiness, I think I'm going to jump into something. Technical readiness, of course, is the stuff that we do all the time as chief technology officers, a role I held for quite a while. But let's look at let's see, where is procurement? I went too far. So that starts on page 18. So you may be familiar with procurement, since you often probably make recommendations in terms of different types of applications or tool sets. So this is the interesting thing, that where we get into this operational side, that there are considerations in terms of how mature a district is as it impacts all different areas of their school district. And this model came from something that has been used to evaluate schools and their technology integrations, so one-to-one or whatever it might be, customized for AI. So in the case of procurement, standards and ethics, what does evidence look like for emerging? You understand ethical procurement's important, but you haven't done much. What's it mean to be developing? Ethical considerations are increasingly integrated into procurement decisions. Well, you may say, what are ethical decisions or considerations? Well, in that case, it might be, what are your data sets? Do they represent your community? Do they represent what we consider to be accurate information? Because the truth is that many chatbots are not, the best in terms of properly indicating, or representing, what we know to be true. And that's one of the reasons that we also hold that critical thinking is an important part of the use of AI tools, because you have to be a critical thinker to write the prompt. You have to be a critical thinker to evaluate the prompt. And so much in that same way, we have to understand what ethics looks like in terms of procurement when it comes to procurement standards and ethics. And then, of course, process compliance. Do you have a regular process compliance? Do you have some standards in terms of how you're making your decisions, for example, on your app selection? And do you have high adherence to whatever standards you've established? So these are just all different ways to try to understand and explain what an advanced type of a understanding and implementation might look like. So we'll go back to the deck, and we'll answer your questions on that here in a moment. I'm sure you'll have several, and I see some things popping up in the chat. So thank you for that. So in terms of the investment that we're looking for from a person, we start with a training. Like I mentioned, those are going to be coming in starting in May. So you'll need to be a part of that. You'll need to participate in virtual training sessions and work with the lead trainers. You'll have to develop a more in-depth understanding of the maturity model, as well as engage in an online trainer community. So we have a Canvas course that you will be a part of with the lead trainers. That will be a place where content development will happen. Content will be held there. The most recent versions of everything will be made available to you there, as well as your opportunity to interact on that. There's also a COSIN community, which you'll be a part of, which will include the lead trainers. But the benefit of that is also that you will also then have exposure to the COSIN network and all the people that are part of COSIN discussing AI. There's an AI community there. So you'll be a part of a bigger community as well, where a lot of people are talking about their implementation, what they found successful, what challenges they're having, and we want to all be a part of understanding where that edge is, where we can provide the greatest benefit to those school districts. Working with your coach, and then also providing regular feedback to us so we can improve the program that we're a part of. All right, and so Robert, you want to get into some of the details?
Okay, thank you, Pete. So we have established dates for the regional trainings. And as was mentioned earlier, they will be in each of the AESA regions that was shared in the chat. Locations, we're still defining exactly where we're going to host it, most likely at an ESA in each of those locations. We're also going to try to match people up to the location closest to them. We know that doesn't always work because of date conflicts and things like that, but we'll make an attempt. And as far as the typical agenda, we've listed that on the right. It's an opportunity for regional trainers to meet with coaches and fellow trainers. You will receive an overview of the training materials, that maturity model. There will be discussion of best practices for adult learning, and there will be an overview of the process for delivering local trainings. So we want to give you everything you need to become proficient in sharing this information. Next slide. So Pete went over the time investment. Well, there's also a cost investment. And there is a $1,500 fee for training and coaching associated with this. You would also have to pay travel, lodging, and per diem for that one session in one of those 4 locations that we showed earlier. Like I said, we're trying to keep it more regionalized to minimize some of that travel expense. You would have to maintain a membership in COSIN. We do have free memberships, and I'll get into that in a second. There is a licensing fee, and this applies to when you do your local trainings. There's a licensing fee per participant. That should be part of your calculation on what is the total investment required and how to manage this. And then obviously you're going to want to have staff and food. You might have some food and beverage costs depending on how you typically treat your trainees. Next slide. So I mentioned paid and free memberships, and this is a model that we use for our professional learning programs. You could go with a free membership, but if you do that, then your cost for each seat, that is an instance in Canvas with the training curriculum, is $5.99. If you go with the paid COSIN membership, you do have to make an annual investment of $12.20 for an ESA, but you have a much lower cost per seat once you consider how the discounts are applied for bulk purchase. So if you have 11 or more seats, obviously you're getting the highest discount at 25%. Next slide. We've put together kind of a scenario that helps you understand how all this comes together. Obviously, your scenario will be different. Potential income. We do not regulate how much ESAs charge for the local training. We've used the number of $800 as a reasonable number here. with 20 participants, that would be revenue of $16,000. The expenses against that would be that investment you made in your training, the annual COSIN membership fee, and the licensing fee for attendees. And this is where you see it's a little cheaper. Your total costs with the paid COSIN membership are a little less than $10,000. Total costs, if you go with the free membership, are $15,000. So, your decision on which way you want to go may also depend on how your frequency of training. If you plan on offering 5 to 10 trainings over the course of a year, then obviously you can spread out some of your fixed investment. So that's just a scenario we put together. Obviously, you have your own break-evens, you have your own ways of doing things, how you treat your participants. We do not regulate what you charge for this event, or we do not tell you need to have serve lunch or anything like that. So that's all up to you when you get down to the local trainings. And that's it.
Thanks, Robert. So what's it look like in terms of a timeline and what's coming up next? Applications are due in 5 days. So that's March 17th, I think, by 6 p.m. It says it in the website that I think we've shared, cosin.org/trainer. If somebody could put that in, that a lot of the information we're sharing here is there in a more narrative form. Applications are at the bottom of that page, and those are again due on the 17th. On the 31st, we'll have completed the vetting, and applicants will be notified if they're part of the regional trainer program. By mid-April, we'll have you a part of an online training community with the lead trainers, and we'll begin the Canvas course at that time. Before all the training, there will be some pre-work that you'll need to do. So that'll all be available, and you'd be made aware of that at that time so that you can engage with those projects prior to attending. And then those events, like we said, are May through June. And then when the training is complete, then local offerings can start based on how frequently and as soon as your ESA would want to accomplish that. So like I said, cosin.org/trainer is where there's a lot of the same information. Yeah, the 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then Catherine, who's on this call with us, is the person to whom you may direct questions after today. And if you have questions now, we're going to open up the floor, and feel free to add again to the chat, or feel free to unmute and ask your question verbally. Who wants to be first? We've got good wait time.
I'm willing to be first. I've got a couple questions. I'm imagining when we do these presentations, who are you envisioning coming from the districts? Like, would it just be their tech person? Would the tech person need to come with the superintendent, tech superintendent, principal? I mean, I'm sure that there can be a wide range and there's not a requirement, but who would you imagine would be attending from a district?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Amy. And we don't drill down on that too deeply because it does depend on the district. As you know, really small districts might only have 2 or 3 people who are district administrators. So we don't want to say chief financial officer when that's also the superintendent. And, so we haven't defined that too clearly. But I would say probably the simplest answer to that would be the key leaders in the district. So again, in a super small district, that might include principals. These are the key decision makers. In a big district, I was a district of 17,000 my last 24 years. And so that would probably just be the cabinet because we had too many principals, to be able to bring up
Gotcha.
Like that. But we would try to have as many people on the cabinet because when you look through all those operational areas, it doesn't really matter. If you're in charge of transportation, you have a part in this too, because did you know AI can help maybe solve some problems for you? So we want everyone there and participating that can be. I'd say the critical people would be the superintendent because they are the key leader, right?
Yeah.
I would say you're going to want to have your technology and your academic person there. Anyone else would be just making it better. But I'd
Mhm.
say those would probably be the key administrators of districts where you have, 7, 8 people on your cabinet.
Okay. Okay. And then, so they would come, they would attend our presentation. We would provide them with the materials. And then would we be providing additional support?
Right.
Or is it pretty much they've come, we've given them this information and we're done?
No. So great question. And to be clear, what's happening in the day and a half, and I'd say maybe that's 3 half days. So you know how hard it is sometimes to get people out of a district. If they're nearby, maybe you could do 3 half days because travel's not a big deal.
Okay.
But if they're coming across the state, maybe you need to do a solid day and a half, and they have to do travel and stay in hotels. But what we're looking at is a day and a half, and during that time, we will help them understand the urgency and the reason, the why. We'll help them understand how all aspects of their district need to be involved, not just, whatever they think it should be. And that one of the more important ones is leadership. We'll help them understand then what their current and future state is and we'll help them build a roadmap on how to get there. That's
So
a
is
lot
that
to do
done?
in a
So when we
day.
say we're building, helping them understand their current state and building the roadmap, is that happening during the day and a half they're with us, or is
Right.
that something we follow up with them on?
Nope, that happens in the day and a half they're with you. However, I will say you saw there's 7 different domains. You may not get through all 7. So part of the skill that they'll be learning is how do they evaluate? And what I think to answer the second part of your question, and what I think you'll find is that many of them will still need to have some additional guidance along the way. So the way I would think of it if I was at the, local level is that this might be a cohort of districts that go through, and you may do, a couple cohorts a year, so that, they could have this initial training. And then, well, there will be a virtual component because, like I said, there's a Canvas course for lead trainers and regional trainers. That same, not the same, but a district specific course modified from that same course will be available to them. So there will be a place where they will be, and you as instructor will also be to kind of provide additional training along the way. And I would think that you would probably have interest in bringing them together on a periodic basis because this is like, any type of improvement plan. You don't just say, here's the plan and now we're done. Here's the plan, it's the
Right,
beginning.
right. Yes. No, I 100% agree with everything you're saying there. And I just have one final question and then I will stop monopolizing the questions. But I'm assuming then if we decide to do additional training, we can charge for that in addition to what we charged for the standard fee that you put together. Is that something that we would then need to pay in partially to you as well? How would that work?
Robert?
If you need to access the Canvas materials to do training.
No, I'm saying, but I'm saying after the day and a half. So, we've joined, we've become regional trainers, we've brought people in, we've done a, training with 4 or 5 different districts, but now they want continuing support. Do you charge them for that? Do we charge them for that? How does that work?
You mean beyond the basic course that the standardized curriculum we provided? That's up to you. What you do beyond that is all within your domain.
Okay.
What we're providing is that day and a half of material, information, and training on how to do it, and then the Canvas course. And then what happens after that, quite honestly, that's what I was saying, is really kind of up to you and your ESA, but I would think that you would probably have a good success with a cohort.
Okay.
And then charge for the meetings or however you chose to do that. You probably have some sort of a system for that it would fall into.
Okay, fantastic. Thank
And
you.
I think one of the things that we thought about for ESAs, especially those who are entrepreneurial and need, have a number of services that are designed to support implementation. If you have a service for coaching or school improvement model support or, something like that, that would that could easily be another service to extend off the training and another way for you to generate revenue.
Thanks, Sheila. Other questions?
Yes, I do
So-
have a question. As far as attracting attendees for these trainings, beyond the label COSN that will be associated with our, do you provide any marketing materials or campaigns or anything like this?
Good question. Sheila and Robert, you want to speak to that specifically?
Are you talking about campaigns to attract people to the local trainings?
Yeah,
Yes.
awareness campaigns, what are we doing at the national level to kind of point people to this opportunity?
We will certainly advertise it on our website. Beyond that, I think we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do there. We frankly haven't talked about that kind of promotion yet. Haven't gotten to that point.
I think that it's reasonable to think that we could have some materials that you could adapt locally to promote the event. And once your events are identified and the dates and the locations and all that, AESA and COSN have both agreed that we will post that information on our websites and potentially social media, things like that. So all the ESAs who are members of AESA get a newsletter from us once a week. And every 2 weeks, you get a newsletter from us about professional learning opportunities. And I think that those are two of the likely places that we could also extend the reach a little bit. So people in the regions, in the AESA regions, all of our members would know when things are happening. So as Robert said, I think there's more for us to talk about right now, but we want to be supportive of your efforts to promote the work that's happening.
And we do the same thing at COSN. So, all of our state chapters have clinics. We promote those on our website as well as in the weekly newsletters. If this is something that would be helpful, I think it certainly is something that we would want to blow wind into the sails of. And I think we just need to have that feedback to hear that would be something that would help to find better success for you. It's a great question. Thank you, Wes.
So Teresa had a question, and I think maybe I confused things. So, and Catherine just dropped an answer in there too. But Teresa, if you're providing the initial training as a regional trainer for for a cohort of districts in your state, in your catchment area, that is the model that Robert just shared, and that you have to have a COSN membership, and there's a licensing structure that goes with that. If in your ESA you have structures that you want to engage or services that you want to build on, like you provide coaching on implementation, well, if that's something that you charge for, then that's something that you could charge for around AI and the things that you've trained in the COSN training. So it's like the opportunity to build a new service off of that workshop. Is that a fair way to say it, Robert?
That's fair.
Yeah. And Leanne, you've been so patient with your hand up there. Jump in, girl.
Thanks. I actually have a couple of questions, but my first and foremost is in Arizona, we do not have like an officially designated ESA for the state that would deliver this training. I represent the Arizona Institute for Education and the Economy. We've been the institute who has supported Gen AI implementation and adoption at the system level. We are who put out our AI guidance for the state. And I wasn't sure if we would even be eligible. I also I launched the Arizona AI Alliance, which is a partnership between many of our leading education organizations in the state to collectively support Gen AI adoption. So first and foremost, would either the Institute or the Alliance be eligible to participate as an ESA if we're not an officially designated ESA?
I think that the short answer is not yet. And the longer answer is reach out to me individually, and we'll try to figure out if there is a way for you to be affiliated with a service agency in the country, or if this is a case where we would need to review our definitions. But right now, the grant is a partnership with ESAs and COSN to utilize that particular network. Now, Robert, you might see a different avenue as a potential statewide group if you're associated with your Department of Education in any way. That might open a different door.
We are.
Okay, so that would be something that we just need to have a conversation about to understand how you fit into the system, I think.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, so just to be clear, this was a Gates-funded grant, and so there are certain grant parameters that the first year we have to stay within the context of. That's what Sheila's trying to parse. It may be very well the end that your group does fit into that. So work with Sheila to kind of work through that. Did you have a second question before we move on to Kat?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so fast forward and assuming that we would be allowed to and be selected to participate as a regional trainer, would the trainings that we deliver then to the sites, could those be conducted virtually? Because I'm thinking about our geography and the small and medium school districts that you're looking at targeting, particularly many of ours are rural, they're on reservations, and I'm just wondering if virtual delivery would be an option for those.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's not the first time it's been asked. My answer to that is anything's possible, but not everything is best. So what me and the subject matter experts that have been teaching these things for the last couple of years have found is that this is complex enough that sometimes it's one of those things where, as we all know, especially since COVID, some virtual things work really well. Some virtual things leave parts missing. And I'd say that this is one of those that would leave parts missing. And the biggest part of that is when we're talking about the complexity of when we're talking about defining your current state and then your future state, your aspirational state, and building that roadmap is a lot of, like in a workshop setting, a lot of back and forth. It's not the type of thing you could do in just a breakout room, or the type of thing you could do with everyone in the main space. It requires a lot of individual attention because there's like 1,000 little questions that need to be answered, and you can move around a room real quick and take care of that. It's a bit more challenging virtually. I think that over time that might become a bit easier, but in my experience, it doesn't work real well virtually. So right now we're focused on in-person up front, and then following that up with, like, once people are trained then and understand and are kind of slotted a little bit more in the process, then it might become a little easier to follow up with virtual meetings.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Kat, thanks for being
Thanks.
patient.
Of course. Thank you for putting this on. I have a we question and a me question, I guess. My we question is in Oregon, which is where I'm at, we have educational service districts, ESDs, which I didn't see listed, but I'm assuming are the same as ESAs.
Yes.
And yeah, okay. And I'm between, I'm leaving one position and starting another position. I'm in Portland Public Schools. It's a district of 40,000 students as a technology integration specialist.
Mhm.
And we did use your tool on the previous iteration with our advisory group for AI, and we're still working on that. And I'm moving to an ESD, and my new supervisor sent this opportunity to me. I don't currently have an email for that ESD, but she really would like, and I think this would be a perfect opportunity because one of the reasons my new position, which is an AI integration specialist, is to help the 10 districts that we will be servicing because they asked for support around how to implement. Can I
Great.
still submit with my own email and just clarify that it's for this service district, or do you need to see something in particular? That's the
Yeah, the
main
most important thing is the connection to a service district. Sheila, do you want to speak more specifically to that?
Yeah, Kat, I think a couple things. One is to make sure in your application materials to say that you're moving to a position in XYZ ESD. And if your new supervisor would be willing to write a letter of recommendation, that would be another way of making that connection between you and the ESD. So that wouldn't be an issue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kat. We have a few more minutes left if you have additional questions. Robert did put the regional dates into the chat. Any other questions that we might have?
And I already got 2 reach outs from service agencies in the central region. So woohoo.
Yay. Yeah, part of the reason we don't know exactly where is because part of it is going to be dependent on who our trainers are, but part of it's also dependent on who's offering to host. And we'd like to host these in local service agencies or ESAs. And how many different names do they go by, Sheila? I know we had BOCES on here, 23.
ESDs, IUs, AEAs, CSAs, BOCES. Some of them don't even have a generic name. They all have their own different name. I mean, it's different and evolved over time in state by state. So yeah, lots of different versions.
Thanks. Any other questions before we?
Any clarification on the video submission? I have a lot of video of me doing online training, but not video of me doing.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Kat. I was going to wrap up with that. So you're like
Okay,
reading
cool.
my mind here. So the video submission piece is really important because it helps us understand, your presentation style. It really doesn't matter what the subject is. Yeah, we're interested in AI, but if you haven't done one of those that you have a copy of lately, we don't want to see something from 10 years, that wouldn't have existed, from 18 months ago. I don't know. We want something that just shows who you are and how you conduct training. That's really what we're looking for. It is an important part of the submission, so make sure to make sure you include that. So great question, Kat. It could be of any subject. And honestly,
I
it
think,
also helps if it's a little, like if you're a little dot in the background with 150 people in front of you, that's not quite as good of a video. So
yeah. And we have looked at videos where people or things that people have submitted where they said, I don't have anything recent. So they just get on and do some teaching and record it.
right.
So I think that is also an okay strategy for just making sure that you have something that demonstrates as much as you can how you present, how you engage, maybe tools that you use, things like that. We need to have really high quality trainers who understand obviously the content, but also understand adult learning and understand how to keep people engaged. So that's what we're looking for.
Thanks, Sheila. Last call. Well, thank you for being here. If you've got additional questions, please reach out to Catherine. You'll receive this? Are we going to send this deck out later, Catherine? Or is it just posted?
We will have the recordings of today's meeting and yesterday's meeting, the slide presentation, and we're compiling questions into an FAQ document, and we hope to have all of that posted on the cosin.org/trainer site by the end of today.
Perfect. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so